Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Salisbury. I am the site manager at the David Davis Mansion in Bloomington, Illinois. I'm also the site manager at the Postville Courthouse, the Mount Pulaski Courthouse, the Metamora Courthouse, and Jubilee College State Historic Site. We're the state of Illinois, we do more with less. So we figured it out. I got one guy working at Jubilee, does the mowing and stuff. And we figured it out in about, say, between 15 and 20 years ago. There was like 14 people running these 5 sites. Now just me and Jesse, he mows the yard. So, the David Davis Mansion, Clover Lawn in Sarah's Garden. She called it Clover Lawn. When you have a house that big, you have to give it a name. I think it's in the Constitution. I'm not sure. But, who was David Davis? So if you've spent any time at the Postville Courthouse, you know that David Davis was the judge on the judicial circuit. He was born in Maryland. His father was a doctor. He was kicked in the head before David was born and died. So David's stepfather took his inheritance, basically. When David was 14 years old, he got sent off to Kenyon College, and his father said, "Go and be a man. Good luck in life." And he tried to sue his father later on to try to get some of his money back. It was only $5,000 at that point in time. That's worth roughly $100,000 today. He apprenticed at the law office in Bishop, Massachusetts. This is where he met his wife, Sarah, and I'll talk about her a little bit more in a minute. I'm sure. Testing. Good. All right. He first came to Illinois. He went to Kenyon College. He actually helped build Kenyon College. David is connected with all of the sites that I have. Of course, 3 courthouses as a home are obvious, but Kenyon College was built by Bishop Chase, and Bishop Chase also built Jubilee College, so they knew each other, and I'm sure that Bishop Chase put the touch on David for money to support his shining new college. He came to Illinois after he apprenticed. He asked Sarah's dad, he's one of the judges he worked with there in Massachusetts, for his daughter's hand in marriage. But he wanted a 3-year engagement, was the trick. And her father said no. Imagine that today. He said, "Go, make your fortune, set yourself up, and then come back and talk to me and we'll see what happens." So it takes him about 3 years. He first comes to to Illinois. He starts off in Pekin. Pekin at that point in time was a dirty river town, gambling, all kinds of bad things, drinking, not much different than today. Hopefully not from Pekin. And mosquitoes. The big thing that bothered him most, believe it or not, was mosquitoes. He got malaria. It was really hard on his health. So he was talked into moving to Bloomington by a man named Jesse Fell. If you guys are familiar with Bloomington at all, Fell was one of the founders of Bloomington and one of the movers and shakers there in town. And he owed David Davis money, and in exchange for forgiving the debt, he gave him about 100 acres in his home, and that's where David moved. Sarah Woodruff Walker. Now, you guys are all genealogists, I'm guessing, yes? The Walker part of her name is the Walker branch of President Bush. They are related back down the line, and we've had some of the president's family come to talks in Bloomington about the Woodruff Walker connection. So like I said, he purchased the home. He writes back to the judge, and it's almost a ledger. Here's what I've done. Here's what people have paid me. Here's what I'm owed. Here's where I'm at financially. Can I marry your daughter? And he says yes. So, lawyer, judge, businessman, landowner. The big deal was the land. He, at one time, owned more land in Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Missouri than Deere. That's all Deere's always pointed to, the person that owned the most land in Illinois, but it wasn't. It was Judge Davis. He was part of the convention that did the Constitution, the Constitutional Convention. He helped write the Constitution, and part of that was setting up the courts for the state of Illinois. And he outlined his particular area so it was almost guaranteed to be elected the judge of the 8th District Circuit. Imagine that in Illinois politics. The circuit at its height was about 14 counties, roughly the size of Connecticut. Now, why the House still stands, everything going on, is because Lincoln helped get, David Davis helped get Abraham Lincoln elected to the presidency. There's a new book out called Republican Miracle. Anybody heard about it? No, really? It's a book it's been out for about a year. Edward Acorn, he's a journalist, so the book is not written as a dry historical tone. It's actually very interesting, very exciting. I knew the entire story, and I was still on the edge of my seat through the whole book. Davis goes to Chicago. That's the first stroke of luck, is that the convention is held in Chicago, Lincoln's home turf. Lincoln is a dark horse at best. If you've ever seen it, there's a Harper's Weekly spread with, I think there's 12 candidates. They're like 6 across the top, 5 across the top, 6 across the bottom, and dead center is William Seward. He's the winner. There's no doubt that it's going to be Seward's nomination to lose. David Davis starts working. Of course, nobody in Illinois is from Illinois. They're all transplants from someplace else. So David Davis sends all these guys out, friends of Lincoln, out to all the different people in the convention to talk to them about Lincoln. He knows they're going to vote for their guy in the first round, but they're talking that Seward is not able to win the election because he's so radical. He has said that we're going to have a civil war. There's no question about it. We're going to have to fight to become either all slave or all free. Lincoln says the same thing, but I guess it's a little less radical. So that's what happens. They go out, the Kentucky guys talk to the Kentucky delegates, the New England guys talk to the New England delegates, and on and on. The first ballot, it's Seward, but not a majority. He doesn't have enough to win. On the second ballot, they start coming over to Lincoln, and by the third ballot, it's unanimous. So what Lincoln does for him is puts him on the Supreme Court in 1862. And then when when Lincoln is assassinated, Robert Todd sends a telegram to David Davis in Chicago. He's holding a circuit or appellate court in Chicago. He says, please come to Washington City and take charge of my father's affairs. Well, it says executor, but he was administrator of the Lincoln estate. It took about 2 years, but he settled the estate, paid all of Lincoln's debts. He's Tad's guardian, because believe it or not, a woman could not be a guardian of her own child, 19th century. He also gets Robert started in business. By the time he settles the estate, Lincoln is worth $75,000. Again, it doesn't sound like much, does it? $1.8 million today. So when we think of Lincoln as a poor country bumpkin, we're wrong. We couldn't be more wrong. His big claim to fame on the Supreme Court is he wrote the Ex parte Milligan. Milligan was a copperhead who tried to encourage people to desert and tried to sow dissension behind the lines in the Union, and he was sentenced to death. Lincoln commuted his sentence, but then later on he went to the Supreme Court, and this law still is used today. For instance, the people that were in Guantanamo, we can't have military tribunals on American citizens if the civilian courts are still in session. It's only under times of war. He leaves the Senate, leaves the court, becomes a senator. He is actually the president pro tem when Garfield is assassinated. So he is in the de facto vice president of the United States. His office is in the vice president's office, and President Arthur calls him vice president, but the history books don't record it. The House. So the House basically, you see, has anybody been? Lots of you? Okay. Pequenar is the architect. He promises David it will take 6 months. It costs $35,000 to build the house. It takes 2 years. And it costs $75,000 to build the house, which I mentioned a minute ago, $1.8 million. That doesn't tell you at all what it would cost to build a house today. The restoration itself was over $2 million. That's just to fix up what was already standing. So, the exteriors. This is a great picture of the garden too. If you've never been, we now have the garden open. If the house is open, the garden's open. So if you've been to the house years ago and the garden wasn't open, come back. These are pretty pictures. This was taken with a drone, and then there's some sort of program put on it, so it looks really cool, doesn't it? 7 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 14,000 square feet. The basement, the ceilings are about 9 feet. The first floor is 13 and a half feet. The second floor is 12 and a half feet, and the attic is much higher than that. I've never actually measured it. So. Indoor plumbing, the forced air furnace. That's not right. It was a radiant heat furnace. I didn't do this. One of my volunteers did it. It's a radiant heat furnace. A boiler. The portrait above the fireplace was what's called a crayon drawing. It looks like a photograph, and I apologize for the picture. You can't get a good picture of that without turning the whole system off, the lighting system, so no reflection on the lights. It was done by a man named Dennis Williams. He was an African American out of Springfield, and the picture was commissioned after the judge's death by his son. Parlor. We've been featured in a couple of different books over the years. The kitchen, the fact that the kitchen, especially mainly the stove and the sink. You see the stove, it is cast iron, it's in a brick wall. You would take dynamite to get it out of there, so we're pretty lucky that it survived. Because look at the second picture, and you can see the sink in the back. It's a soapstone sink. But by the 1960s, it was just a bank of those, everybody remembers the metal kitchen cabinets. My grandma had, I think they were aluminum, I'm not sure. Metal kitchen cabinets all down that west wall. The barn is the oldest building on the property. It was built roughly 1840s, early 1850s. We say circa 1850. That's 20 years either direction. Was roughly 1850. The carriage barn was built about the same time as the mansion itself. The giant thing on the carriage barn on the left is no longer there. Did you guys do that here in the community? The quilt patterns on your barns and stuff like that? Yeah. It was really cool for a few years, but it started causing problems with the wood behind it, so I took it down. And then I begged people to take it away, and nobody would, so it got tossed. The woodshed is actually the building out there. You see the lattice work on the right hand there. That is a restroom. So there's 2 privies basically on the front of the building, on the south of the building, and then all the rest of the building is storage. This is our visitor center. If it looks like a 1960s ranch house, it's because it is. Was. This is something we're very proud of. The house itself is magnificent, and it's hard pressed. We talked about in magazine article with Rockefeller's home, with Biltmore, things like that, the restoration, the quality of restoration. But this is something that most homes don't have. And if you go to old homes that have gardens now, they're not original. 9 times out of 10, they're not original. They're not in the same place they were. Even Jefferson's Monticello, they discovered after 50 or 100 years it was in the wrong place. They had to pick the whole thing up and move it to a different part of the estate because they had put it in the wrong spot. This is exactly the way she had it in 1872. They're trying to replace the plants that were missing. It's very hard to get heirloom plants. We were lucky. Our geraniums actually came from Monticello. Am I saying that right? I never remember whether it was Monticello or Monticello. Came from Monticello, and we propagated them, and now we have these wonderful geraniums. But Jefferson, the Monticello, they've lost theirs. They don't have them anymore, so they don't sell them anymore. And this is all done by my master gardeners. They're a fantastic group of people. Any master gardeners in the room? There's one. I couldn't do it without them. What I know about plants and botany, you can put in a teaspoon with room left over. They're just fantastic. So there's some more pictures of the garden. I can't even tell you what those plants are. Peonies. I should have done that one. This was Scott Kunst. He was a landscape historian. He also ran a heirloom plant business. And he came down, he was just blown away by the fact everything in it is original. He was in the landscape business for I think 40 years. And when he retired, we said, well, come down and do some talks and help us out with this and that. He goes, I'm done with that stuff forever. Our letters, you're all genealogists, so the archives on the mansion are unbelievable. We are slowly but surely transcribing every letter that the judge and Sarah wrote to each other, letters that the family members wrote to each other. All you have to actually Google is Davis family correspondence, and it comes right up. It's also a searchable database, so if you put Lincoln in, every letter that Lincoln's mentioned in comes right up. You can put horse, the names of the horses, things like that. There's a letter from the judge to his son when they had one of their children died. I sort of skipped over that. They had 7 children. 5 of them died before, 3 died the same day they were born, and 2 died before the age of 2. One of those was named Lucy, and Sarah was just destroyed when the little girl died. And the judge still had to go out on court, and he took Sarah with him around the circuit. At the same time, George, his son, is riding with Lincoln on the back of Lincoln's horse, Old Buck. So they ride the circuit together. George asked Lincoln how tall he was, and he said he was 6'4", and he had Lincoln lay down and measured him. He was 6'4 and a half. But then he's riding back to George because Lincoln wants to tell George that he thinks about him often. Visit Clover Lawn. Now, some of these statistics are no longer true. We used to get 1,000 kids in September and 1,000 kids in May. With COVID, kids are so far behind on everything that it's impossible for we've had kids that were in 4th grade and come to the mansion for their very first field trip in school. 4th grade. Unbelievable. So I think we got maybe 50 kids last year. Where our new base is homeschool and church schools, Christian academies, things like that. Our events, Lincoln's birthday is a fun one. That's Lincoln on the right. He's kind of hard to see there in the back. But a little girl grabbed his hat. He's like, where's my hat? Our big events are the Garden Festival and the Christmas events. Easter egg hunt, we don't really do much anymore. We might do it again next year, we're not sure. And then we have car shows all summer long. So our next one's August 2nd, so come out and see us. The lower left-hand corner is a fun one. This is the school program that we used to do. And the kids were all city kids, bless their hearts. They'd never been up close to a horse before, so they just lost their minds. And he let them touch the horse and pet the horse, and they were just stunned. We'd make butter in the kitchen. They would just take some heavy cream into a jar and pass it on the table, shaking it. And we'd give them a crack and they'd put butter on it. You think we gave them slices of chocolate cake. So we're open Wednesday through Saturday, 9. The last tour starts at 3:30. We'd love to see you out. You can actually buy seeds. The heirloom seeds are actually taken from the plants in Sarah's garden. We had a long battle with the estate of Willard King. His son wouldn't let us reprint the book. It'd been out of print for decades. And then bless his heart, he passed, and his grandson said, sure, I don't care. Why do I care? This is the book that Dr. Young, I don't know if does anybody know Dr. Marcia Young? Dr. Young? Anybody? No? This was my idea, thank you. The house in 2022, we wrote the book, and it just tells the basic story of how the house came to be. It's $100, bring cash. That's me. We're now the Department of Natural Resources. For a long time, we were started out Department of Conservation for years, and then we made our own agency, Illinois Historic Preservation Agency. And then for some political reason, we got put into the Department of Natural Resources. And now we're under the Illinois State Museum. So I'm going to have to update these. Our board of directors. We need you. No, we don't. What I do need, though, is for some of you folks to go to Postville and talk to Denise and volunteer for Denise, okay? She's the only person there. I think she has 1 or 2 people that help her out once in a while. But if she wants to take a day off, she can. She just can't. She doesn't get paid, whatever. But she wants to be able to start a volunteer program, a volunteer corps, a group of people that are there. You're not there to be there every day. But when she needs you for school groups, things like that, or when she needs to go someplace else, to come in and actually be in charge of the Postville Courthouse. She's there Tuesday through Saturday from noon to 4. And you can help preserve history. Does anybody have a question? Yeah.
I noticed a couple things. First, Jesse Fell. He had anything to do with ISU because there's a Fell building that my daughter was in.
He
when she
did.
was in school.
He was a lawyer. Plus, he owned a lot of ground around town. I'm not a Jesse Fell expert by any stretch of the imagination. I know he was a friend of Lincoln. He was a very good friend of David Davis. He was a part of the Republican. He was part of the people that talked to Lincoln into running for the presidency. His story is best told at the McLean County Museum of History. That he's like their patron saint, when it was David Davis is ours. But yeah, I'm sure he had a hand, and I think Illinois Wesleyan as well. I think he had a hand in both institutions.
Oh, okay. In perspective, in Bloomington now, where is this house located?
It's almost the center of town. It's off of, where Beer Nuts is at?
Oh, the address.
The address is 1000 Monroe Drive.
Miller Drive?
Monroe Drive, not Monroe Street, Monroe Drive.
Okay.
If you just put your GPS David Davis Mansion, it'll pop right up.
Then I have one other question.
I'm here all night.
Sorry about that.
No.
I thought I'd get mine over with first. He was appointed to the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court by Abraham
Yes.
Lincoln. Then he became a senator. I assume he resigned.
He did. He resigned because, well,
It's
he wanted to be in the
unusual.
Senate. He was getting ready to. No, it's not. Then it's not.
Oh,
Now it's more.
All right,
The
just
Supreme Court is
wanted-
much more prestigious. People would resign the Supreme Court then to be a governor. It was more prestigious to be a governor,
Okay.
much more prestigious to be a senator than to be a Supreme Court justice. He was part when Tilden Hayes election, when there was a tie, it was not a tie, but they were going to have to go to a committee to decide it. There were 7 Democrats, 7 Republicans, and it was going to be David Davis. David Davis by this time is considered an independent. And then nobody was sure which way he would vote. And then the Democrats here in Illinois elected him to the Senate. That's the legislature at that point elected senators. It wasn't a vote by the people. So they thought if they put him on in the Senate, he'd sway to the Democratic side until win the election. He decided that they offered him the job, he took it, and then said, "I'm not going to serve on the committee now. It's obvious what you're trying to do. I'm not going to buy into that." And then he later on said he probably would have voted for Hayes anyway, so it wouldn't have changed anything.
I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Much more. The Supreme Court is much more prestigious today than it was then.
How many volunteers does it take to keep that going?
I have roughly 70, but I also have a cadre that does, like the garden event takes, I think, 100 and some volunteers to sit in all the gardens all around town. There's 2 people, 4 shifts, so that's 80, 240 altogether, something like that.
So is there anybody that gets paid
No.
for any job?
No.
I mean, anything else?
I'm the only one that gets paid.
Are you rich yet?
No.
So
Yeah, when I started taking over 5 sites, I didn't multiply my income by 5. It stayed the same.
Yeah,
how
I
long were
know.
you affiliated with Postville?
How long have I been there? Since October of 23?
Oh, so you didn't know Shirley Bartlemay when she was
No,
there?
I just don't
Do you ever have a problem with volunteers? Enough volunteers?
Having enough, you never have enough volunteers. There's no
Right.
such thing as enough volunteers.
That's good.
Yeah.
What was the name of, sorry, Jim. What was the name of the book you mentioned right at the beginning?
The Republican Miracle. Edward Acorn, Achorn. Fantastic book. Yeah.
The fellow who didn't want you to publish that book, what was his reason,
We don't know. We asked him for years and years because he theoretically could have asked for a cut even, but he just said no. Yeah. I don't know, he may have had boxes of it at home because they were selling online for 50, 60 bucks a pop. So as soon as we printed this one for 20, that market was done. So, yeah.
How did the Davis family, after Yolanda passed away, how did it go from the Davis family? How long was it closed before it became a historical site? What did that entail?
Okay, the house was, the last descendant before the house was given over was in 1959. They were going to literally knock it down. The plan was to knock it down, take what's Davis Avenue now, right on through to Locust Street, and it would have been much more subdivision. The state asked David Davis IV, who was the state senator at that time, for the Lincoln Davis correspondence, the paperwork, the letters and stuff, the telegrams, things like that, that they had written back and forth, especially things that were about the election. So they were telegraphing back and forth all day during the nomination. Several telegrams went back and forth. The most famous one, I'm not sure if you guys know, the Lincoln, when Davis says, "We're moving heavy in earth to get you nominated," and Lincoln says, "Make no promises that bind me." And Davis says to the guys there, he doesn't know what we're going to have to do to get him elected. So they wanted those telegrams. So he said, "Sure, but here's what we want in return." They wanted tax breaks on this state because it was even worse back then, taxes on stuff like this. And we want you to take the home and make it into an educational institution for future generations. And they said yes. So that was 1960. And it was within a very short time, I would say within 2 or 3 years, when it was started to be open. Not like it is today. There was caretakers there. If you caught the caretakers there and the door was unlocked, you'd get a tour. You'd get to go in the house, but it wasn't a set thing until probably the late 60s. And then it just kept getting passed down. It was originally, the Illinois State Historical Society was the entity in charge. And then Illinois State Normal University at that time was the local people involved. So when the house was first, run with caretakers, the neighbors, of course, built their houses around here because of the prestige of the mansion. And the first thing they started doing is complaining about the mansion. Just like you move into an airport and there's planes going over my house, what the hell? So Robert Bone Student Center, Dr. Bone, they were writing letters to him that they wanted the outbuildings torn down because they were unsightly. They wanted the mansion, they were fine with the mansion, but they wanted all the wooden buildings torn down. And he just put all these letters into a drawer and left them there. And their second attack was like a year or two later. Pests. There was raccoons and rats and mice and just vermin crawling all through these buildings. And he took all their letters and just put them in a drawer. And so it's his actions or non-actions that all that stuff still stands. Anybody else? I love answering questions. I could talk for hours.
When was the visitor center?
We did that about 14 years ago or so. We used to be in the barn out back. You can see the corner there to start the tours, but then we moved over into the visitor center.
I have another one for you.
This is about the Postville Courthouse.
Yeah.
Change hats here. I gave a chair to the Lincoln College Museum from the original Postville Courthouse. Is there any chance that Lincoln College would give it back to the Postville? Do they?
I don't know. Something like that. If they offered it, we would take it. And if you know the person, that's the one with the museum, right? The little museum setup. Yeah, they're not going to give it back to us. You don't give back cool stuff.
It's not the Lincoln Heritage Museum. It's the Lincoln College Museum.
I'll ask Denise to see if she can. If you could contact Denise and tell her who you are and what you did and how it all worked out, and then she can get back to me. I don't want to step on Denise's toes.
Do they have any of the original furniture in the Postville Courthouse?
Now? No. Everything's gone.
I'm sorry, you said the Lincoln College Museum?
Yes.
I've never heard of that.
Well, you know the statue right there on Keokuk of Abraham Lincoln reading a book?
Yeah.
The building behind him, that statue, was the museum.
Yes.
Lincoln
But that
College
was-
Museum.
But there was
That was the same as the one out there now.
they
The
moved all
Lincoln
the
Heritage Museum is
Yeah.
the same.
It was around the McKinstry Library.
And it
Yeah.
was,
It was like a
Yeah,
small,
just a room.
it wasn't a real big room, but
it
it
was
was,
mostly
yeah, it was a-
books.
yeah.
Like two sections.
Paul
Glass.
Beaver, Paul Beaver was in charge of it at the time.
Yeah.
And, yeah. It was a nice little museum for, you know, what they had. It was a nice museum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But what I like about the new one is interactive.
Oh, yeah.
oh, yeah.
And I think that's why people like Lincoln's Museum in
Well, I
Springfield.
think his interactive one has some stuff out in the, I've only been there
Right.
once, it was years ago, like China and things like that. So
Yeah.
if it's there someplace, that's probably where it is. I don't know though. I met the young lady in charge of that, but it's been years and years since I did. Somebody over here?
Yeah, when you mentioned, are all of the buildings that are on that site now all original, or were there any original?
No,
that
they're all
torn
original.
down? So
No, they're all
they didn't
original,
tear
yeah.
anything down?
Well, they did tear some stuff down, but it was the barnyard where the back fence is. You can sort of see that truck there, very back of the picture. There's a fence there that delineates the property. On the other side of that fence would have been like corn coops, chicken coops, odds and ends, stuff like that. Just little shanty
But
kind
not
of
the
stuff.
major buildings.
No, all the major buildings survived. No.
What year was David Davis born?
1815. He died in 1886. Ask me how many years that was. I don't know. I'm an historian for a reason. You can't do
How many
math.
acres still exist then?
There's 4.5 acres now. 4.25 to 4.5. Originally, there was 1,200 acres on the original farm. It ran from where you see here all the way to Veterans Parkway, and encompassed where Bloomington High School is, where the country club is, where the mall is. All of that, Washington Street, all that was Davis farm property. Yeah.
So are all of the prestigious neighbors complaining about the house now?
Oh, prestigious neighbors, absolutely they do. Absolutely,
Do they
they do.
really?
Sure they do.
Okay.
Sure they do. Even though this house makes their little ratty ranch houses $300,000 a pop, they still complain about us. So
Why?
just because they like to. We built the fence. I've been yelled at, cursed at.
What?
We built the fence. There was always a fence there. And you sort of can see it in the left of the side of the picture. There was always a fence there. And this woman came up to me and she was yelling at me, when I moved here, there was no fence here, blah, 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 blah. You terrible people, you black and white. I just walk away, I don't argue with them or say anything because I would get mad.
They don't appreciate history.
Yeah. And then to come to find out, she's like either the second or third wife. She wasn't there when the house was built. She had no idea what was there. Big liar. Yeah.
Are the furnishings of the house original?
Yes, about 95% original. There's one or two things here and there that are not, but yeah. Some knick-knacky stuff that's not original, things like that. And people say, are these really valuable? No, you can go to Gridley's Antiques and buy them all for $500 pounds. But the cool thing is it's in that house. So, yeah. There's some neat stuff. There's a bust of David Davis that was done by, oh gosh, I knew as soon as I said I shouldn't have. The same fellow that did the hands. If you ever been to Lincoln Museum, the hands.
Volker?
Volk, yeah, Leonard Volk. He did the bust of Davis. It's in the library. So.
Well, the idea is the furniture is old, belongs to the house.
Mhm.
And when you would go in, this is where I feel when I go in places and you hear a story about somebody, you feel like you saw Abraham Lincoln there,
Yeah.
sat in a chair. It's the way I feel.
He didn't because it was 1872 when the house was built. The funny thing is, I didn't really tell the dates and stuff, but we used to ask teachers, did Lincoln ever come to this house? Because we'd assume they'd say no, because they knew it was, and they'd say yes. 2/3 of the times we stopped asking the question because it made them look stupid in front of the kids. So we just don't ask that question anymore.
There's a number of bathrooms. How was there a septic system for
No.
Bloomington then, or how was that?
No, there's 3 bathrooms, and it would simply just been a pipe, just an open pipe running out into an open pit, a cesspool, probably a couple hundred yards away from the house. And then the honey wagon would come along every so often and clean the cesspool out. But I imagine the system probably wasn't until, 1940s would have been something they would have started doing, sewers and things like that, but I've never studied that closely.
Was it built by a local contractor?
No, he was from Nauvoo, Icarian. He was an Icarian. He was actually French. He's the same architect that did the Illinois State Capitol that's down there now, not the old one, the new one. and he also did the Iowa State Capitol. It still stands, are both his. He died fairly young. He died not a whole lot of time after this house was finished. Within, I'd say, 10 years, give or take. He died fairly young. Yeah.
How many acres does that house sit on? And were there any, when that house was built, were there any other farms or shanties or shacks in that area that?
No, it was just their
anything out
farm.
there besides crops?
Yeah, no, it's just their farm, 1,200 acres. They had people that did the farming for them, the tenant farmers, but they didn't live on the property. No, no, about 4.25 now. Anybody else? Going.
So how many generations of the Davis family lived in that house?
Three, and we're down to 7. We have the 6th generation is on our board. 5th generation, 6th generation is on our board. Yeah, and there's David Davis is 7th. Yeah, he's in his late 20s, I think.
So
Pretty much all the houses around there were at one time part of that property? Were there
The
houses
property was
built?
part of it. Yeah. All of them are.
And they're griping about the house?
They're all 1960. It's a 1960 subdivision.
So they sold off some of the property?
All of the property, all but about 4 acres. They sold 1,200 acres altogether. Yeah. George's house was called Belmont. It was where the country club, the Bloomington Country Club, sits now. Up until about 1930, it was the country club. His house was the country club. It was added on to around the base of it, but you can still see George's house coming up out of the base. It was used during the Spanish flu epidemic, and then it burned down in about 1929.
Was there a reason they sold the property off?
Hey,
I mean, strictly?
there's and even with the breaks and stuff, there was a huge inheritance tax involved at that point in time.
Yeah.
They kept, and the city was growing around it. It was sort of isolating it, so they didn't really farm it as much. And it had been sold off in pieces up to that point anyway. It wasn't 1,200 acres in 1960. It was much less than that. So they just sold the remaining property close around it at the very end. They still own farmland. I think it was 6 or 7 years ago. There was a big auction. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, of Davis Farm. That was $15 million was the bid, and they said that wasn't enough. So I don't know what they were hoping to get, but it sounded like a lot to me.
So the foundation is a 501c3?
Yep.
those descendants, are they, some of those still in the area?
What's that?
Some of the descendants of
Yes,
the-
yeah, several. I don't want to throw a lot of names out, but Julia Davis, she's a lawyer there in town in Bloomington. Yeah, there's a
Do they
handful.
appreciate their heritage?
Oh yeah, they're all involved to some one degree or another.
Right.
You get the come to the garden walk, get a garden book, and you'll see Julia's name on one of the ads in the paper. Yeah, Christmas too. She's going to get married in the house next year, but we're only going to do that for her. Weddings are too much of a pain. I don't need to earn extra money on the side. I get paid. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you for having me again. Denise Martinek, Tuesday through Saturday, 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock. She would love to see you. Thank you.